Hello dear students, good afternoon. How are you all? Hope you all are fine, you all are good, sailing in the pink of your health, right? So let me welcome you all on behalf of the Shiv Jyoti Educational Group Kota. So today we are going to start your book, and that is Woven Words. The chapter is My Watch. So are you ready for that? Keep your book handy and start learning that. So line by line we are going to learn it. I am going to explain it. This is a very interesting story, right? Very interesting. I mean to say this story is full of humor, right? Tinge of humor is found everywhere, or we can say this chapter is based on satire, a kind of satire on our system, on somebody's mentality, right? So the chapter is My Watch. My watch. You all have got watch, be it wrist watch or wall clock, but here the chapter deals with a watch, and that is wrist watch. And this chapter was written by Mark Twain, right? So these phrases are there in the beginning, and we have to look at them before we proceed. Boardings, right? And human cabbage, vicious happiness, prized and brain hymn. This we will learn in the chapter somewhere, and then I will explain, right? So let's study. My beautiful new watch had run 18 months without losing or gaining, and without breaking any part of its machinery or stopping. So the writer of this chapter, Mark Twain, is explaining that he purchased this wristwatch around 18 months before, right? And since then it has been given correct time, no problem is there, it is giving no problem to the writer. Okay, I had come to believe it infallible, mean unmistakable, that commits no mistake, right? Without error. Infallible in its judgments about the time of day, and to consider its constitution and its anatomy imperishable. And the writer is of the opinion that this watch cannot have any problem, because it has been giving correct time, accurate time, so no destruction can be there. Imperishable means beyond destruction, right? But at last one night, but as ill luck would have it, I let it run down. But as ill luck would have it, the writer happened to drop this watch by chance, right? So I grieved about it as if it were a recognized messenger and forerunner of calamity. And the writer was quite upset, and he thought that this incident, yes, the watch fell down on the ground, so it was just a message to the writer, indirect message to the writer, that the problem is going to start. The writer is about to face the music, right? Calamity means disaster. But by and by I cheered up and set the watch by guess, and commanded my bodings and superstitions to depart. Somehow the writer could manage, and he set the time of this watch by himself, right? And he tried to become normal, and he set the watch, means set the time of the watch by guess only, and in this way he thought that these are just superstitions, and no kind of ill superstitions or calamity was going to happen, right? Next day I stepped into the chief jewelers. Chief jewelers means a kind of shopkeeper, means watch, a shopkeeper where watches are repaired. So chief jewelers to set it by the exact time, and the head of the establishment took it out of my hand and proceeded to set it for me. Yes, establishment means that shop, watch shop. So the head of that watch shop means chief jeweler. He took it from the writer and he just actually the writer took this watch to the shopkeeper, this jeweler, for the correct time only, just to set the correct time, nothing else was there. But the shopkeeper, he did something different. What? He said, she is 4 minutes slow. The shopkeeper said, actually this watch is losing time and it is running behind time, right? So, regular ones pushing up, and the shopkeeper said that watch required a mild push-up. I tried to stop him, but the writer somehow did not want any kind of repairing in that watch. He tried to tell the shopkeeper, means this jeweler, stop him, tried to make him understand that the watch kept perfect time. The writer was about to tell the shopkeeper that there was nothing wrong with that watch. So please don't do anything, just set the correct time only. He tried his best, but the shopkeeper, it seemed that he was paying no attention, right? So, but no, all this human cabbage, a kind of abusive language, right? So, means the writer is just cursing, the writer is cursing the shopkeeper. Human cabbage could see was that the watch was 4 minutes slow and the regulator must be pushed up a little, and so while I danced around him, means that the writer Mark Twain tried to explain each and everything wherever the shopkeeper was going. The writer was moving around him, so it seemed that he was just dancing. It means he was just trying his best to explain each and everything, that nothing was wrong in the watch, just time was incorrect. So the writer took this watch to the shopkeeper, to this jeweler, chief jeweler, to get the time, to get the correct time set, right? In anguish, the writer was quite upset and implored him, requested him to let the watch alone, to leave the watch, stop doing anything else with the watch. He calmly, very patiently, peacefully and cruelly, but as ill luck would have it, he was cruel enough and did the shameful deed. Means whatever the writer was afraid of, the writer had a doubt that the shopkeeper, that chief jeweler, could have opened the watch, could have scattered all the parts of the watch, right? So the same thing happened and my watch began to gain. Now as a result, what happened? Earlier the watch was losing time and now the watch was gaining time. So it gained faster and faster day by day. Within a week it's sickened to a raging fever and its pulse went up to 150 in the shade, and it had crossed all the limits, and it seemed that its temperature, means this is humor, okay. So the temperature of the watch was rising and rising day by day, moment by moment, and it had come to 150 degrees. This is just a humor, otherwise nothing else is there. At the end of 2 months, it had left all the timepieces of the town far in the rear and was a fraction over 13 days ahead of the almanac. Almanac means calendar, right? So after some time, what does it mean? At the end of 2 months time, the watch was going ahead. How much was it going ahead? 13 days. Right. So the watch was in future. According to the writer, the watch had been in future, and according to the watch, the writer was in past. This was the situation. So this is also kind of humor, right? So it was away into November. The writer was in the month of October, and since the watch was gaining and gaining time over again, so it was in the month of November, enjoying the snow while the October leaves were still turning, means October was going on, and according to watch, November was there. So according to the writer, the watch was already in the month of November when cold weather is there. So the watch might be enjoying cold weather. Okay, it hurried up house rent, and according to the watch, house rent timings, bill payment timings, everything had got upside down, everything had got hodgepodge. Bills payable and such things in a ruinous, disastrous way that I could not abide it, means I could not put up with it, I could not tolerate all these things. I took it. So once again the writer takes this watch to another shopkeeper. I took it to the watchmaker to be regulated. He asked me if I had ever had it repaired. So when the writer took it to the shopkeeper once again, so he was asked, means it was a different watchmaker, different person who had to repair, right? He was a different mechanic. So he put up a question. Has it already been repaired somewhere? Has it already been open for repair somewhere? Okay. So I said no. The writer somehow lied, and it had never needed any repairing. He was saying no, no sir, no. And because my watch is quite correct, it is giving correct time, so it has never been opened before. He looked a look of vicious happiness. Inwardly the writer is thinking something different, and eagerly pried the watch open, and this mechanic, this watch mechanic who was to repair, so he looked into the watch, he quite opened it just to find out, right? Pried means to look into the matter, just to find out, and then put a small dice box into his eyes. In this way he put up a device into his eye and peered into its machinery, and he said it wanted cleaning and oiling besides regulating, and asked me to come in a week. So all these things the writer was told, and the writer was advised to come back after some time, and that was in a week, means it will take around 1 week time. So you just get back after 1 week and I'll repair it. After being cleaned and oiled and regulated, my watch slowed down to that degree that it ticked all appointments I go to. Missing my dinner, I gradually drifted back into yesterday. So once again disastrous result was there. Now the watch was losing time. Earlier it was gaining and gaining time, but now this watch had started losing time. So it was leading, it was not leading, but it was lagging behind, right? So you can see, I gradually drifted back into yesterday, means into past one day, then one more day before yesterday, the day before, okay. So yesterday, then the day before, then into last week, and by the comprehension came upon me that all solitary and alone, and the writer thought that he was left behind. Everybody had been leading him, and he was left all alone in the past. I was lingering alone in week before last, and the world was out of sight, and the writer thought that everybody in the world had left him behind, and he was left all alone by himself. I seemed to detect in myself a sort of sneaking fallow feeling for the mummy in the museum, and a desire to swap news with him, and the writer thought that he was left behind and nobody was with him except some mummies. You know, during Greek time, some mummies were there, some valuable dead bodies used to be preserved, right? So these so-called dead bodies were known as mummies. So the writer, again humor is there, so the writer thinks that he has been left all alone by the mummies, and whatever he has to exchange, whatever he has to share, he has to share everything with these mummies. Swap means shared. I went to a watchmaker again. Once again the writer thinks thinks of a plan to go to watchmaker, and he took the watch all to pieces while I waited, and then said the barrel was swell. So this time when he took this watch to the watchmaker, he was told that it once again needed repairing and the barrel was swell. He said he could reduce it in 3 days. So once again he was given 3 days time to get back and collect the watch. After this, the watch averaged well. Thank God. The watch was giving now average time. Average time means sometimes gaining, sometimes losing, and result is average. Right? So, but nothing more. For a half day, it would go like the very mischief and keep up such a barking and whizzing and whooping and sneezing and snorting that I could not hear myself think for the disturbance. All these sounds are there. Means now the watch had started making different sounds like barking, whizzing means breathing very fast, right? Sneezing means this is sneezing, and snorting means when somebody is making sound while sleeping, this is known as snorting. So this is also humor, right? So the writer is saying that he was not able to hear anything because of this sound, different sounds at regular intervals the watch was making. And as it held out, there was not a watch in the land that stood any chance against it, and now it was of no use hoping something better for this watch. But the rest of the day it would keep on slowing down and fooling along until all the clocks it had left behind caught up again. It seemed that the watch had decided, the watch had made up its mind to play a kind of game. Sometimes it was losing, sometimes it was gaining, and sometimes it was lagging behind, and sometimes it was leading other watches. So in this way it was playing a kind of game. It would show a fair and square average, and no man could say it had done more or less than its duty, and nobody could say that there was something wrong with the watch, because sometimes it was giving correct time and sometimes it was not. But a correct average is only a mild virtue in a watch, and I took this instrument means this watch, to another watchmaker. Now fourth time the writer decides to take this watch to another watchmaker. He said the king's, and what the writer was told by this another so-called another watchmaker, that this time the king bolt was broken, and I said I was glad it was nothing more serious. And the writer, in a pretension, means the writer just showed off that he knew very well, he was very much familiar with the term king bolt. So he said, only this much? Okay, thank God, nothing else is wrong. But he didn't know actually what the king bolt was, right? So without thinking, he just said, okay, is this the only problem? And he didn't know that that was really a big problem. To tell the plain truth, I had no idea what the king bolt was, but I did not choose to appear ignorant to a stranger. He repaired the king bolt, but what the watch gained in one way, it lost in another way. The same problem persisted. Sometimes it was gaining time, and whatever the time it was gaining, just the next moment it was just losing that so-called gain time. It would run a while and then stop a while and then run a while, and so on, and this process went on. It was gaining time, it was losing time, it was gaining time, it was losing time. So this process went on using its own discretion about the intervals, and it seemed that the watch was taking its own decisions by itself. Yes, it was not paying attention to anybody else or to its master. So it was the master of its own will, right? And every time it went off, it kicked back like a musket, and whenever it was time for the watch to take rest, so it was to stop. So when it was to stop, it created a kind of jerk. It created a different kind of jerk that is used. This term is used with rifle or gun. Whenever a fire is shot, so a kind of jerk we feel at our shoulders. So this is known as musket, means a kind of gun. So the same kind of jerk was felt when it stopped. Again, this is humor. I padded my breast for a few days, but finally took the watch to another watchmaker. I kept this watch on my pocket, right? In this way, I cared for it. Delicately, I cared for it and I kept it on my breast pocket. Finally took the watch to another watchmaker. This is fifth watchmaker, and he picked it all to pieces and turned the ruin over and over under his glass, and whatever the dice he was putting on, he was wearing, and under that dice he was putting all parts of the watch apart and turned the ruin over and over under his glass. And then he said, there appeared to be fresh start. He said that this watch needs fresh start. Can I, if you permit? It did well now, except that always at 10 minutes to 10, hands would shut together like a pair of scissors, and from that time forth they would travel together. Now, in a very humorous way, the writer is saying, the writer is presenting a unique problem the watch was giving. This is really quite different problem from the other ones this watch had. What? Now, everything was going on quite well, right? Look, it has been given, it did well now, means it did give correct time now, but a unique problem had been created. What? Exactly at 10 minutes to 10, except that always at 10 minutes to 10 means 9:50. Okay, 10 minutes to 10 means 9:50. Exactly whenever it was time 9:50, both the hands means hour and minutes hand, right? They both got lapped up over one another, over each other, and they both started traveling together. Means just like a scissor. In a scissor, two blades are there, right? In this way, right? So here the different case is there with this watch, and that both the hands, hour hand and minutes hand. So they both lapped over each other in this way, and now they both were moving together in this way. So this difference was there, and they both were traveling together. The oldest man in the world could not make head or tail of the time of the day by such a watch, and so I went again to have the thing repaired 6 times. Because nobody in the whole world, no genius, no perfect watchmaker could tell what the correct time was according to this watch, what exactly wrong was. So 6 times the writer took the watch again for the repair, and this person said that the crystal had got bent and the mainspring was not straight. So he found out some different mistake, and that was related to crystal. Crystal had got bent, right, and mainspring was not straight. So this was the problem. He made these things all right, and then my timepiece performed unexceptionably. Really, in a very, very different way, it was giving out time. Save that now and then, after working along quietly for nearly 8 hours, everything inside would let go all of a sudden and begin to buzz like a bee. Means quite different, once again quite different problem was there. For consecutive 8 hours it went well, but all of a sudden something different happened. What? It started creating a bee's buzzing sound all of a sudden, and it gave the impression that a sound of buzzing was there. A bee was there on the surface of the watch, and the hands would straight away begin to spin round and round so fast that in this way, in this way, right? And they simply seemed a delicate spider's web over the face of the watch. On the surface of the watch, it gave the impression of being haunted by a spider. She would reel off the next 24 hours in 6 or 7 minutes. Means the watch was so fast, the watch was getting so much fast time that it was covering the whole 24 hours day in a few minutes on these, in 7 minutes, and then stopped with a bang, and all of a sudden with a great sound, crashing sound, it just stopped. Bang means loud sound. I went with a heavy heart to one more watchmaker. 7 times the writer took this watch to the watchmaker, to another watchmaker, and looked on while he took her to pieces. Then I prepared to cross question him rigidly because this thing was getting serious. This time the writer had already decided that he was going to put up a question to the watchmaker. Exactly, please tell me exactly what wrong is there with this watch, and if you really are able to repair this watch, then only touch it, otherwise just say no to me and I won't force you, I am not going to bother you. So this the writer had already going to decide. While I waited and looked on, I presently recognized in this way watchmaker an old acquaintance, and when I had a closer look at that watchmaker, I came to know, oh no, I have already seen this watchmaker somewhere, where, and he stretched on his mind, and then later he came to know that he was already familiar with this person, so called watchmaker, and actually he was not a real watchmaker, but earlier he was a steam engine engineer, right? Steamboat engineer he was, and he was not actually a watchmaker and not a good engineer either, right? So the writer had already got acquaintance, means familiarity. The writer was, that person was already known to the writer. He examined all the parts. And this steamboat engineer, so called watchmaker, carefully he examined all the parts of the watch carefully, just as the other watchmakers had done, and then delivered his verdict, means decision, final decision, with the same confidence of manner, exactly as the previous watchmakers had given their decisions about the watch from time to time. So this watchmaker also gave, and he said, she makes too much steam, because he was a steamboat engineer. So accordingly, whatever the knowledge he had got, accordingly he gave his final judgment, and he said she makes too much steam. She word has been used, means according to poetry, personification is there. So again humorous touch is there. You want to hang the monkey wrench on the safety valve. So this was required, means a monkey wrench was required to hang on the safety valve. This is a technical language, right? I brained him on the spot and had him buried at my own expense. So the writer was cursing this watchmaker, and inwardly he had just decided, it seemed that the writer had already decided not to take this watch again to any watchmaker, because it was of no use now. My uncle William, now deceased, alas, he is no more. So my uncle William used to say that a good horse was a good horse until it had run away once, and that a good watch was a good watch until the repairers got a chance at it. Yes, very good saying. The writer's uncle, who is no more, that's why he is saying alas, means he is feeling upset with sorrow. He is saying, my uncle used to say that a horse is a good horse until or unless it has stopped running, means so long as the horse keeps on running, it is good. Exactly in the same way, a watch is also a good watch until or unless it has been opened for any kind of repair. So once a horse stops running, it cannot give the same performance in future exactly as soon as a watch is open for repair once. It never gives correct time in future. So, and he used to wonder what became of all the unsuccessful tinkers and gunsmiths and shoemakers and engineers and blacksmiths, but nobody could ever tell him. So this is humorous ending, and the writer is saying nothing can happen to all these people, right? With this chapter is coming to an end. This chapter is over. Now let's have a look at the writer's detail. Mark Twain. You can see Samuel L. Clemens. Actually, Mark Twain is not the real name. Actually, the real name of this chapter is, the writer's real name is Samuel L. Clemens, who was born in the year 1835 and died in the year 1910, and who used the pseudonym Mark Twain, means a pen name, right? So he was using a different name, not real name, while writing chapters, or in literature he used pen name as Mark Twain. Was an American humorist. I told you in the beginning, this chapter is full of so many humorous touches there. Short story writer and novelist he was. Brought up in the small town of Hannibal, Missouri, Mark Twain had less than 10 years of schooling. He didn't enjoy schooling too much. He worked as a printer's apprentice, trainee, a steamboat pilot, a prospector, and a journalist. Mark Twain tried his luck at all these jobs. All this gave him varied, different experiences and a wide knowledge of humanity. Right? In the adventures of Tom Sawyer, he drew on his own childhood. Means in this book, he is talking about his own childhood. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which was planned merely as a sequel, means second part of this adventure. Means first part is Adventures of Tom Sawyer and second part is Adventures of Huckleberry, right? This is sequel. Merely as a sequel, went on to become a masterpiece, and later the writer became quite famous, renowned writer on the globe, and the story being narrated through an uneducated boy, and we can say he had not enjoyed good schooling, so we can say this story had been narrated or written by an uneducated man. So with this, my dear students, this chapter has come to an end. I hope you all might have got it, and till then, have a nice time, stay blessed, stay home. Thank you.